When we first start working on a project, one of the most important things to do is to get a grasp of the context and what others have already done. So, one of the most powerful ways to do this is to conduct a literature review. Literature reviews are really important, really powerful, and they help us get an understanding and a sense of what is most salient and what we should be focusing our attention on. They could be really important in also helping us shape and understand whether we actually need to conduct our own research. But most of the time, people conduct literature reviews and produce a very dense, heavy document that is very difficult to navigate and very difficult to actually put into practice. So in this video, I'm going to give you 5 steps to actually create powerful literature reviews that your team is going to use and that are going to actually inform your project design. So first of all, one of the most important things is the terms of reference. So especially if you're going to hire an external person to conduct the literature review for you, you need to be crystal clear on what you want them to do. It can also be that you have an internal colleague who's going to conduct the literature review. That's fine. The same thing applies. It's really important, especially if you're the social and behavior change manager or if you're the behavioral science expert on the team, that you're involved in drafting the terms of reference. So you want to make sure that there's a strong behavioral lens in how the terms of reference are structured and in the questions that are being asked. So we want to make sure that we're asking targeted questions that are going to give us an understanding of what the barriers and enablers are around the behavior. So it's really important that you are closely involved in writing up that document. The second thing you want to do is to be very crystal clear to the person who's going to be delivering the literature review on what the deliverables are going to be. So the document will be important, so the written literature review, but they should actually also have an accompanying document that's going to be a simplified, distilled version of that document, of the dense document that your team can take into action and that's going to inform the program design. So it's up to you to decide what that could look like, but this could really help you to sort of accelerate the process of making use of the literature review and, not having your team get kind of like bogged down by it being so dense and difficult to understand and ignoring it. So just try and make sure that you give the person some direction of what you want them to do with that second deliverable to make the insights a little bit more usable. And the third thing that I usually like to do is actually to take that literature review and look at it again from a behavioral science lens and distill the information in a way that's going to help my team make sense of it from a behavioral science perspective. So you can do this in different ways. Use tools that your team is already comfortable with. So don't kind of introduce them to things that they don't use. I personally use Miro. A lot of the teams that I work with are comfortable with Miro. So here I'm going to show you that the way that I've done this for one project. So what I usually like to do is just to divide the data, first of all, into things that the organization can actually do something with immediately, things that are a little bit more secondary or not directly in the wheelhouse of the organization, and then things that are interesting but that can be dealt with in the future. So this would be step 1, to just kind of like look at the barriers that have come out of the research and organize them in a way that's going to be feasible for the organization. So what can they tackle? What's where they would need partnership to tackle some things, and where it would be interesting to tackle some of these barriers, but perhaps not just yet. So that would be the first step. And then the next thing that I like to do, and this is why Miro is so great, I like to create post-its for each of the barriers, and then I like to tag them with what the actual barrier is. So are we talking about a knowledge barrier here? Are we talking about an attitudinal barrier? Are we talking about a service provider barrier? So that helps us get an overview of which levels of the socio-ecological model we're dealing with. I also like to space the post-its in a way that's also visually showing which are individual level barriers, which are societal, which are structural. And this also helps give the team like a clear outline of what the issue is and where the various barriers are. It's a great visual also for seeing where the largest number of barriers lie, right? So if you see that the majority of the barriers are at the individual level, That's a great indicator that whatever interventions are going to be designed need to be targeting a majority of these individual level barriers. But if we see that the majority of the barriers are structural or policy level barriers, then that's also a great cue that we might actually need to partner with an organization that specializes in those areas, or it's not something that we can actually deal with if we're not an organization that deals with those types of barriers. So I find that a really useful visual cue. The next thing is to make the findings actionable. So even if we have an overview of all of these barriers, so what, right? So that's still not going to get us to program design. So the next important layer is to actually start kind of labeling these barriers further. One of the best ways to do it is just to score them. So have some sort of feasibility impact score matrix or whatever else you want to do. I usually kind of design this based on the organization. So we might have 5 different kinds of questions that we want to ask ourselves, like, is this going to be aligned, is removing this barrier going to be aligned with the policies that we are trying to help implement in the country? Is it aligned with our own strategy? Is it aligned with the overall program? So whatever it is that you're working on, I think it's really important to kind of set some key criteria about which barriers you want to address. So finally, you want to then connect the dots to actual intervention design. So once you've done all of that analysis and distilling, and by the way, you can do all of this in a kind of workshop basis or a workshop format. So you could, for instance, just take a day out as a team and agree that you're going to go through the workshop findings together if you prefer. So that might be a really good way to engage your colleagues on using the findings from literature reviews. So getting back to it, so then we want to connect the dots back to intervention design. So this is where we want to take some of these barriers that we've prioritized, and we want to find the right kind of behavior change techniques and the right levers to use that will help us to design interesting and exciting programs. I'm going to do another video on how to actually identify behavior change techniques and how to translate them into project ideas and project interventions. So please subscribe and let me know what you thought of this video, and please leave any questions that you have for me below and I'll make sure to answer them.